Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. These are words from the contemporary poet and luminary, Coleman Barks. And he based them on words by Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. I remember visiting Rumi's tomb in seminary. It was a high point of my time in seminary. We were taken on a pilgrimage to Konya, the city where he lived, and visiting his tomb itself was a little underwhelming because it really is more of a like kind of a Disneyland museum than a sacred site. The line, the crowd to walk by it at this time of year, Shebi al-Rus, the commemoration of Rumi's death, you just kind of file in with this big raucous crowd and get kind of scooted on past. After the night before, you go to the big performance of the Sufi dancers, of the whirling dervishes, which is, because of the history of Turkey now, the modern history of Turkey, a secular performance. It's much more like going out to the opera than a sacred ritual. And yet, at the same time, thousands of people from around the world come because they've been inspired by Rumi's call to become lovers of love. And it's all true right there. All this banality and profundity, all happening right in the same moment, all of it true. It was on that pilgrimage that I first learned about the critique of Coleman Barks, our beloved so-called translator of Rumi, because Coleman, he doesn't speak any Persian, the language that Rumi wrote in, and he's not so much a scholar. He took up the task by the call of the great men's movement leader Robert Bly. And he gave Coleman the charge. These poems, they're dead. They need to be brought alive. They need you to breathe life into them. And he did. And all of us here who know about Rumi know because of the beautiful words of Coleman Barks. And yet, there are so many lovers of love, lovers of Rumi and his work, who feel anger at the way that Coleman Barks contributed to a legacy of removing Islam, removing the tradition that Rumi came from his work, making it palatable to a Western audience. That first line, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, in the original text is more like out beyond ideas of what is not Islamic and what is Islamic, out beyond ideas of kafir and Islam. And of course, it wouldn't have had the reach, right? And yet, there's an issue here too, an appropriation of another's culture. It's all true. Bernie Loomer was a Unitarian scholar. He was the dean of the Chicago School of Divinity for some time, and he talked about his idea. He was part of that school of thought we call process theology, process or relational thought. And his idea had to do with the size of the thing. And every time he would write size, he would capitalize every letter S-I-Z-E with dashes in between to give a sense of that space, the scope he was talking about, the size of the soul. He saw the increasing complexity of creation as a glorious blossoming that God was delighted to behold, that the universe expanded and God expanded, and this was his conception of how things worked. What is the size of your soul, he would ask groups. What is your soul's ability to grow and expand, to stretch when life throws more contradictions your way? He said, by size, I mean the stature of a person's soul, the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. The intensity and variety of outlook you can entertain in the unity of your being without feeling defensive and insecure. I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development of their diversity and uniqueness. I mean the power to sustain more complex and enriching tensions. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. What's the size of your soul? When I was recovering from the second time I had a mental health crisis when I was 25 years old, I remember weeping in the backyard of some friends and this close little knit community of friends. I was so grateful to be there. And one of the kids, I think she was, 8 or 9 at the time, ran by and just yelled out as I was sitting there weeping, "A Universalist training academy." Her mom was a minister. But the phrase just stuck a deep place in me. A Universalist training academy. I felt like I'm here. This is it. This backyard, this lifetime, this world. A training academy for the soul, a place to learn to love more and more. Universalist, the people who believe that at the root of it all, there is a love that will not let us go, that leaves no one out. And so how do we grow into this love that loves all the parts, that loves every part of ourselves and every part of each other and every part of those children and every part of that shooter, to love it all? That's the call of our faith. How do you love it all? How do you weave your basket with ridgeline and snake, with roots and leaves and all? Been thinking about in our work to become more anti-racist, more anti-oppressive, to become that beloved community that we dream about, how often shame gets in the way. And I've come to believe that shame is a very powerful teacher. It's one of the most powerful teachers. But it's not a good teacher. Shame is a powerful teacher because it wraps the places within us that we cannot love tight, to hold them in place, to keep us from growing the size of our soul. It does that for a really good reason, to help us stay connected, stay belonging, to meet that survival level need of attachment with those around us. But it's not a good teacher because it leads us to exclude parts from that great circle of love. Someone referred to this once as they were telling me about their distaste for the anti-racism workshop that they were attending. Said all this stuff about acknowledging my whiteness and my racism, it just feels too much like original sin. And for me, it was a real light bulb moment to understand the critique of a lot of our anti-racism work, because if it is feeling like original sin, if it's leading us back to, and whether it's about racism or whatever else in your life, this call to grow, leading us back to an idea that there's something inherently wrong with you, you can't do it. You can't grow through that. And so I think it's important always to remember that original sin, we've taken a stand against that. There is nothing broken or wrong with you. But it's not all fuzzies and rainbows, too. We know that. There is an inheritance, a collective inheritance that we have come into, that we are responsible for now with our lives. This original struggle, this collective inheritance of suffering. The best slogan that I've ever heard for it is Unitarian Universalism. We're here to love the hell out of this world. We're here to love the hell out of this world. So I want to close with one last reading. This is from Reverend Tess Baumberger. She said, "Wouldn't it be great if you could take a picture of your soul? And then when your mother wanted to brag about you, she could show the people the picture and say, 'That's my daughter. Doesn't she have a beautiful soul?' All sparkly and many-colored and flowing all around her. Wouldn't it be great if we walked around surrounded by our souls so that they were the first things people saw instead of the last things? Then people would judge us by who we really are instead of how we look. Imagine no more racism, ageism, sexism, faddism, shortism, homophobia. Imagine falling in love with a person who is. Falling in love with who a person is, just by looking at them. It would be a kind of cloaking device, hiding physical faults, defects, or even perfections. I'd want it to be mandatory," she says. "Then people would work at making their souls more attractive instead of their bodies and faces. Imagine people knowing by your soul that you really need a hug. Imagine people helping each other and their souls changing colors or growing. Imagine soul gyms with exercises to get your sagging soul in shape. Imagine the long lines forming for soul lifts at churches, temples, mosques, synagogues, or nature's grand cathedral. My people, your souls are already beautiful. And whatever soul lifts are calling your name, may they help you to love the hell out of this world. May it be so, and amen."